Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you. We're here talking Packers midweek. We got some injury updates for you for both the Eagles and the Packers. So definitely some stuff to chat about, as well as now things are beginning to pour in about what other teams may be doing this offseason, including some interview requests that are fairly relevant to the Packers. So I'm going to fill you in on that as well. So first of all, let me just say sorry for not getting out a video yesterday. I was joking on Sunday, but I was going to smash my face against my laptop. I apparently did it one too many times because I sent the computer that we use into like some kind of security mode that I could not get out of until just earlier today. So after working on that this morning, hey, we're at least up and running. So, but let's get to the injury report. Claudia's got it for you.
All right, for the Packers, limited players would be Jordan Love, Javon Bullard, Edgerrin Cooper, Brenton Cox Jr., Andre Dillard, Quay Walker, and Evan Williams. And on the do not practice list, it was TJ Slayton, Zane Anderson, and Christian Watson.
Yeah, a few thoughts here. So when it comes to Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur's been, expectedly, it's playoff week, kind of coy about his quarterback's chances, right? Saying that he was limited today, going back to that ever popular word. But then Jordan Love at his locker after LaFleur's press conference was kind of pressed by especially Matt Schneidman in The Athletic about what are your chances. And Jordan was not saying much. He said that he does have feeling back in his hand, but that the elbow is sore and that that's what they're working through. Now, interestingly enough, the Packers generally have opened to the reporters for practices the stretching period and then the individual drill period. Then once they go to start walking through plays, that's when they kick the media out. Today, they basically did stretches and then kicked the media out, taking away that individual drill portion. Essentially, of course, hiding the fact that everyone will be looking at the star quarterbacks throwing. So putting all of this together, my guess is that the Packers are just, playing coy. It is playoff week. They don't want the Eagles to know if Jordan's going to go or not. Jordan himself said that he's hopeful to go for the game on Sunday. Look, even if it's sore, he's going to go. I think this is just playoff subterfuge, to go with Gutekunst's word from earlier in the offseason. Other than that, though, yeah, it's kind of a long, limited list, but the good news is a lot of these guys are coming back. Evan Williams, Quay Walker, Andre Dillard, they all make their return to the practice field. LaFleur did say that for Walker and Williams, it's fairly seamless because they're both very good football players. So, I would think that they don't have to get in full practice after full practice in order to go, especially for a playoff game. So good news there. Then on the DNP side, the only thing that's really kind of awful here, yeah, you wish you had Zane Anderson back with Evan Williams back. That's at least less of a blow. But TJ Slayton, going against Philadelphia is not the game that you want your 350-pound defensive tackle to not be active for. Yeah, so we will see how the week progresses for TJ Slayton. What's up, Jackavi? What you got?
Good day. Is there any possibility the Packers activate some practice squad players for the game?
Yeah, I would think almost certainly. Now, they had until actually 3 minutes ago to sign any out of the organization free agents, because with playoffs, the rules get a little different. They got to lock in their rosters earlier than a regular season game. So if they were going to sign an outside free agent, it had to be done 4 minutes ago. And that didn't happen from any news that I saw. So the roster that they've got is the roster that they're going to have, at least for this weekend's matchup. In terms, though, of practice squad for the last game against the Bears, they elevated 2 guys, 1 linebacker, 1 safety. I would think, depending on injury status, we would see some elevations again, Jacavi. Yeah, good question. All right, so then for the Eagles, on their side of things, their injury report is not out yet. But one thing that we do know is that Jalen Hurts, who has not played in full since week 16, with a concussion, he returned to the practice field today. Now, that does not make him a guarantee to play on Sunday, but because you can practice while still in the concussion protocol, but it means that he's trending in the correct direction. So the Philadelphia Eagles, after resting darn near everyone in week 18 and missing their QB since week 16, it looks like they're going to be at full health come Sunday, which is
how nice.
Good for them. Right. Big Al, what you got?
Hello, Jon and Claudia. I can't wait for Quay Walker to come back, especially with Edgerrin Cooper playing better near the end of the year.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I've been saying, it's a shame that Walker's injury came when it did, but also it's promising. We can have hope about what the duo looks like for Quay Walker. If we get that version of Quay Walker back, and pair him with the budding star that is Edgerrin Cooper. The Packers, in theory, might have solved their inside linebacker or off-ball linebacker situation with pretty much just those two individuals. But that's based upon the assumption of Quay returning to how he was playing for that month pre-injury, which that's just what we got to hope for, right? All right, so then the other real news that's kind of been developing over the last couple of days outside of the obvious Christian Watson injury that I'm sure everyone knows about now, but the other thing is teams have gone through all of their firings. We've passed Black Monday. Everyone's gone and fired and unemployed. So now teams are beginning to evaluate who they might want to poach from good organizations like the Green Bay Packers. So, for one, Robert Saleh, who's serving as a consultant right now with the Green Bay Packers, the Jaguars are going to be interviewing him for the head coaching position. One question that I've seen a lot about online is if he is hired, do the Packers then get a comp pick because he's technically employed by the Packers, etc.? No, I'm fairly certain the answer is no based upon other people that I've read, just based upon the fact that Saleh is a consultant, he's a part-time employee, he is not a full-fledged part of their coaching staff. That kind of relegates him out of the comp pick discussion. Then some other names to know about here. John Eric Sullivan is going to be interviewing for the Jets general manager job. And then the Titans. The Titans GM search is being headed up by Chad Brinker, who was an exec in Green Bay years ago. It is believed that he is going to be putting interview requests in for John Eric Sullivan, Mitt Hendrickson, and Richmond Williams. So 3 Packer executives all could potentially be interviewing for the Tennessee GM job. So just things to have on the periphery. Obviously, there's very, very important games going on. But if these hirings go a certain way, we could see a little bit of brain drain coming from Green Bay. Big Al!
What is your key of stopping the Eagles' offense? For me, everything starts with Saquon Barkley, and I'm confident we could stop him.
Yeah, I think you're spot on in terms of stopping Saquon. This is a game, as far as I'm concerned, that you have to make Jalen Hurts beat you. You have to. You can't allow Saquon to be the one that does it. Now, the Eagles' offense has shifted with the emergence of Saquon, with the spectacular season that he's had. They've undergone a transformation much like Green Bay's, where Love was throwing less and less because Jacobs was so successful. Jalen Hurts' his numbers compared to last year, he's throwing less and less. The thing is, though, it's kind of taken away from the Eagles their explosive play rate, their big plays. Jalen Hurts really hasn't had many of those in the back half of the season. He also, in correlation, hasn't had nearly the turnover-worthy plays that he's generally had historically. So I think you force the Eagles to have to throw, which is its own danger, right? But I'd much rather be going against Jalen Hurts in a playoff game than I would against Saquon, especially considering that offensive line. Speaking of the offensive line, the secondary key here, if you're going to stop Saquon, if you're going to stop Hurts, it means you have to get through the best offensive line in the NFL. That's the Eagles. They are so incredibly good in the trenches, especially on the offensive side. Any hope to cracking that offense at all, you at least have to break barriers there. Commando G-Man!
Speaking of the full health of Eagles' receiving core, how worried are you on the secondary ability to cover? Or are you more worried about the pass rush contain?
I guess I'm more worried about the pass rush contain. And I don't want to say worried. I guess, like, in my mind, I'm considering the pass rush, let's just plan on it not being that effective. That may sound doom and gloom, right? But you realistically got to evaluate that way against their offensive line. Given what we've seen from the Packers pass rush thus far, I think we can say, like, they're going to run a lot of contain like we saw in week 1. Make sure that Jalen Hurts can't run against you. Make sure that you're closing off lanes for Saquon, right? And that means you're probably not going to be chasing Jalen Hurts downfield a lot, or upfield technically. Okay, so let's just take that out. That's the thing that I would circle as, like, that's just not going to happen. They're not going to sack Jalen Hurts a bunch. In terms of the secondary, I think Acme Packing had an article on it earlier this week in terms of, like, Stokes has looked really good. Valentine has looked really good over the course of the last month. We talked a lot about Nix's transformation. But at the same time, they haven't been targeted on the boundary all that much because teams have been able to feast so frequently on the middle of the defense, specifically that layer between the off-ball linebackers and safeties. That layer has been executed against so much that, well, we don't got to test Valentine that much. We don't got to test Stokes that much. I guess I have a higher level of confidence there, given how they've played, than I do expecting the pass rush to get home. If that makes sense. That's where I'm at with that.
Brandon Jumansine meant to put it full health full health is in the play.
Which is the current expectation for Philadelphia from what I understand. Like Brown, Smith, they should be good to go. It looks like at this point, Philadelphia is expected to have all 22 of their preferred starters out there on Sunday, which
how nice.
Not going to be the case for Green Bay, but I mean, good for them. Gabby?
My internet's falling apart.
It's been a rough couple days right here for internet, too. I don't know what's going on.
Big Al, with Watson being out, what player needs to step up?
Yeah.
For me, Jaden Reed, he's a playmaker, but in the last months, Reed's performance has dropped.
Yeah, so if I'm looking for, all right, Christian Watson is out, I got to figure out how to replace Watson. What does that really mean? Well, you're probably replacing what has been your most consistent run-blocking wide receiver. All right, so that's one issue. But then two, I think the thing that's hardest to replace that's your deep threat. That's the guy, that's your gravitational pull offensively. Because even if he's not getting the ball, we know all year long that's still where safeties have to drift to account for him, his size, his speed, right? So how are you going to replicate that? And the answer is there's not just a simple tit for tat. I do think Luke Musgrave, he's got to get in there. Like, he's got to get into more of a rhythm than we've seen at any point this year. They have to plan on using Luke Musgrave in this game like they did so much of last year. Not how they did at really any point this year with seam burners and stuff like that for Musgrave. Then I wonder if we are going to see a little bit more Bo Belton, even if it's as a decoy, just to get speed down the field. And then lastly, I think a lot of this is going to fall on Dontavian Wicks. Who's got to be the one guy that's got to come up with a play against man coverage? Because I would expect Vic Fangio is running more man than he traditionally does. So who's going to be the one guy that's got to beat man coverage? I think it's going to have to be Wicks. And then the last wrinkle to this, just because to point out how much of a community effort it's got to be, the last point is probably in the form of Romeo Doubs. I talked a lot last year about how like Romeo Doubs in college used to be this big, deep threat receiver. And then in 3 years in Green Bay, that's just not what he is. Like, that has not translated to the NFL at all. Now he's much more like possession, just get a quick out kind of guy. He hasn't been a deep threat like he was collegiately when one year I think he had 45% of his targets be deep at Nevada. When Watson's been out, we've seen Doubs go deep more often. Maybe that's a part of the thing together. But it's not just one answer. It's all combining to get there. Chip, what's up, Chip?
How worried are you that the latest 4 or so shaky games are actually not flukes and are going to continue? Will we ever see early season Green Bay strength again, or is a weak late season Green Bay the norm?
Well, I think like the team let me see. How worried are you that the last 4 shaky games are actually not flukes or are going to continue? Will we ever see early season Green Bay strength again, or is weak? You know, I think we can, Chip. I think we can get back to early season strength, quick starts. I think some things have to change there, though, in order to do it. Really, the whole crux of the thing here really isn't even often defense. It's offensively, right? It's ever since Jordan Love took over, they've been a slow start offense, both in games and in the total picture of the season. So I think what we've got to do is, one, at least early on, simplify the offense and go with the stuff that you know works. You don't need to come out with your scripted 15 being the most complicated 15 plays that you have, especially considering that you're young, you're athletic, you're going to just naturally be faster than most teams you're going against. So I would prefer to see that first 15 actually be some of the simpler stuff and then evolve the game plan as the game goes on. I think that that's one of the keys to getting the offense out of this stagnant beginning pattern that they found themselves in. As for the other part of this, if I'm deciphering your question correctly, how worried am I that the last 4? Well, I am concerned. It really feels like the team is trending in the wrong way. Now, if you would have asked me 3 weeks ago, it was like, all right, the run is beginning now. We've taken down Seattle. We're trending the right way. We're ready to get to the mountaintop and take down one of the good teams, right? Okay. So then on the other side, then you went up against the Vikings, got stagnant as hell, and then an absolute collapse against the Bears. Whether they were trying or not, it was still a game that they should have won. Given the fact that like LaFleur, some of the players have mentioned that after the Week 18 game against the Bears, there was like, I don't know if you want to call it come to Jesus or a shouting match or like whatever the hell it was. There was a conversation in the locker room about the passing game after Week 18. Is it just going to be more of the same because the vibes are off and the timing's off and everything else? Or was that the wake-up call they need? Honestly, yet to be seen. I'm not, frankly, that hopeful. And I don't want to sound pessimistic, but like the vibes around the team haven't been terrific for like 3 weeks now.
Packers Kingdom saying, I want to see us work on Slay.
I mean, that is a bold move. I know he's not as strong this year as he's been a couple of the other years, but it's still a bold take there, Packers Kingdom.
McKnight, what will the Packers linebackers do against the Eagles? Stats?
Yeah, I'll have all the like numbers for you on Friday when I really dive into like the game preview itself. But realistically, I would expect, like we saw earlier in the season when they were running contain, and also at the midpoint in the season when we saw the Packers really transform their run defense, I do think we're going to see the linebackers play up more often. That's going to open up that midpoint of the field between linebacker and safety for Hurts to drop it in buckets over the top. But I think against Saquon, you're still going to see them positioned up like we've seen in their more successful run defense weeks.
Gary's saying we can win this game, guys. Jacobs he's a constant. No real worries there on offense, but the O-line and Love and the receivers have to play a really solid game, unlike the last 2 or 3 games.
You know, the thing with the Packers, no, they have not beaten one of the top, seeds, one of the top records in the NFC. But they've shown that they can at least hang in every single game. I'm not going to sit here and say that the Packers are unequivocally better than the Eagles, the Lions, the Vikings. I'm not going to. They haven't shown that. But they've shown that they can hang, and that means that there are at least viable pathways to victory. Josh Jacobs very well could be one of them. Figuring out how to go against the Eagles' larger percentage of man coverage, it's going to have to be another one. If the pass game has another terribly stagnant game like we've seen in the last 2 weeks, yeah, then Green Bay season probably ends on Sunday.
Roman's saying the Eagles are very young in the secondary.
That is ultimately true. I mean, really outside of Slay, but yeah.
Packers Kingdom saying get Wicks one-on-one with
I
Slay.
go back to Slay.
Also saying use Jacobs in the passing game.
Oh, I'd be just fine with that. And it's something that's kind of disappeared over the last 6 weeks or so. They did do it more early in season, but especially as his carries upticked, it's like they wanted to focus more just on carries because he was getting so much use there that they stopped getting him the ball in other ways. And I think that's got to make a comeback. I agree.
Big Al saying, I'm hoping that the Packers got to start out fast and not play behind. Yeah. I want the Packers to play fast-paced and use the pass game to set up the run play.
I like it.
Setting up 3rd and short.
I like it. Play fast. Yes, agreed.
Broad saying, are there any brews happening?
It's 4:00 in the afternoon. This is an energy drink, sir. Big Al.
Even though we are talking about the Eagles, what was your thought on the last play against the Bears? It was an awful play calling by Hafley. It reminds me of the Panthers game last year.
It is one of the 2 things that completely and utterly blew that game for the Packers. That's what I think of it. It was a god-awful, atrocious play call that was completely ignorant of all game circumstances. Much like Matt LaFleur opting to take a timeout before the Brandon McManus field goal, when instead they should have taken at least 38 more seconds off the clock. Those 2 plays. You can play like garbage the entire freaking game. You want 2 plays that cost them that game? It's the timeout and it's Hafley's play call. I don't understand it for the life of me. The only theory I've been able to develop, and I think it was actually Commando G-Man in the watch party, is were they hoping that the ball would be caught at midfield and then the Bears would have to run more to run out the clock? if that was the case, it's a terrible plan. It was genuinely a bad idea.
Packers Kingdom, no more end around on
Amen.
4th and 2. Get Love needs to extend with his legs or stop being scared and take off, put his body on the line. It's do or die, and wide receivers need to catch, and I need Love to be Superman.
It would be nice, right? You know, I don't wonder if the knee injury sustained by Love earlier this year is part of the reason why we've seen less running from Love this year. The other part of that, as a secondary thought, is keep in mind last year. When was he running more often last year? It was in the first half of the season when the offense was, more broke. In the second half of the year when he went on his tear, he wasn't running much. And I think it's a combination of like, he's now looking at it going, hey, I was good not running when the offense was full firing. And I don't want to do that to my knee again. I think maybe both of those things have gotten into his head, and that's why we're seeing him not run. But he needs to get running again.
Chip saying, toss out a name of a player who could show up as a surprise star this coming game.
Surprise star this coming game. I'll go with Carrington Valentine. It's going to be very interesting to see where ultimately he lines up, what all of his matchups wind up being. Of course, part of that's up to the Eagles. But Valentine, over the last 7 weeks, has played incredibly well, especially in man situations. If the Packers are going to be playing up with their linebackers a little bit more, like I kind of expect, then Valentine's coverage, whether he's on Smith, Brown, really doesn't matter who, is going to become all the more important. And I think he's shown that he is ready for that kind of assignment to step up to that mantle. I guess I'm going to go there as the top answer.
Mick saying, get throws 2 tight ends. Use passes to all of the field.
They're going to have to. In fact, Tucker should have been utilized more than he has over the last month. And I already talked about Musgrave. They have got to get him back to his role that he was in last year, and not this whole, like, we're going to throw it to you 4 yards away and then watch you baby giraffe your way into falling down. It's a bad plan.
Big Al, what do you think about our CB matchups versus AJ Brown and Devonta Smith?
Oh, it's going to be a tough matchup, like no doubt about it. I would expect Eric Stokes to need help, like regardless of who he's against, even with how well Stokes has been playing. Yeah, whatever. I'm still skeptical of that one. Like I said, though, Valentine is the one that I'm a little bit less worried about.
Excuse me. Buckeye Josh, are you worried about Love getting injured again? Eagles injured him first time around, and now he's not 100%. Eagles defense is definitely scary.
Am I worried about it? I mean, like, yeah, I guess I'm a little bit more worried than I generally would be if he had a completely clean bill of health coming into this game. The thing is, though, the knee has shown that it's been completely healed for a while now, and this elbow injury, we don't know exactly what the injury is. They've never revealed it, but you got to believe it's something with the ulnar nerve. Just basically funny bone, considering that he lost feeling in the side portion of his hand and now his elbow is just sore. I wouldn't be worried about any type of recurrent there or anything like getting worse. I think it's just he might be playing with a slightly wounded wing since they're going against the Eagles.
Packers Kingdom saying we need to be physical and Matt needs to call his ass off. Need to go up 14-0 and attack them. We need a killer game. Let's put the Eagles down.
It would be nice. But yeah, that's a tall order, Packers Kingdom. I would agree, though. I think they have to come out quick. I do think that this is you want to build a lead against the Eagles. Of course, easier said than done. But just strategically speaking, I don't think you want to go through this game and put yourself into a deficit, because then the Eagles are just going to be able to run. And you're going to have to rely. You're going to lose control of the game quickly if you're going to have to pass your way back into this game like we've seen the Packers have to do so many times this year. I do think a quick start is paramount, and that's why I'm so leery of the first 15. If they're complicated and slow, that's not the best way to set them up for success.
Roman saying an early Packers lead does not score the Eagles. Watch how they've finished games.
I'm sure it doesn't. I think it's still the best strategy for the Packers.
Big Al, I could see Malik Heath being a surprise star in this game because he makes most of his opportunities.
That's a fair point, and especially considering that he's shown to be, Watson technically led the team in drops per targets and stuff, but Malik Heath seems to be the only one who willingly makes plays for the quarterback, regardless of who's in at quarterback. You haven't been able to say the same thing about Jaden Reed for a while. And I mean, Dobbs has been so sporadic in terms of play and everything. Malik Heath is like the one guy when he's active, you can bank on him to make one reliable catch. And they need it for sure.
Sword of the Spirit
What's
said,
up?
what's up? We got nothing to lose in Philly. Let's go, Pack.
We'll take it. Jagabi, what you got?
I'm mostly worried about our O-line. Can they hold their blocks? I have a feeling this is going to be a defensive game.
Potentially, I do think that this has the potential, depending on how both teams want to play it. I do think that this has the potential to devolve into a like ground pound game. These two teams are two of the best running teams in the NFL without a doubt. And if both teams lay into that because each one is actively attempting to control clock or whatever else, then we could see it devolve into a ground pound game pretty quick. In which case, Philadelphia's offensive line is better than Green Bay's offensive line. I think ultimately Green Bay's offensive line should do okay against Philadelphia's front seven. That's certainly a survivable matchup for Green Bay's offensive line, but I would be leery of it devolving that way.
Roman asking, any word on Jordan's throwing today? Earlier they said the media wouldn't see that.
All we really got out of LaFleur and Love is that he was limited. Now we did know that we know he did some throwing, but the Packers did indeed close off practice before he started throwing. So in terms of how did he look, what kind of throws, they weren't saying. We just know he did some.
Chip saying, rank the NFC teams that the Packers match up best against, roster for roster, style for style.
The teams remaining? That's a really, really good question. That's a really good question. Let me hit a couple more of these and I'm going to come back to that, Chip, because I want to actually give that thought.
Mick asking, will Love's injury keep him from packing cheese?
Maybe. Elbow's a rough spot for putting stuff in boxes, man.
But guy Josh, are quick starts really the move? The Eagles are a second half team. I think a defensive battle would be the key.
I mean, yeah, I think you can also argue that the Packers offensively especially are a second half team. I do think though that you want to get the Eagles, I hate to say it this way, but like back on their heels. Like I said earlier, I think the key to this is more you want Jalen Hurts to have to beat you than you are comfortable allowing the Eagles to just continually run it with Saquon for however many carries it takes. So I think from the Packers' perspective, you do want to try to build an early lead and make the Eagles have to try to come back. That's the way my gut is telling me. If the Packers do have to get into this thing where they're down 14 and they need to sling it all over, and that's when they actually get some kind of offensive urgency, we've seen them do it a ton of times this year. They're capable, but it's not the way I'd prefer to go in this game.
Sword of the Spirit, and stop with the turnovers. What's the latest on Love's elbow?
Hey, turnovers have been way better as of late, Sword of the Spirit. The latest on Love's elbow is we don't know. Love said at his locker today that he was hopeful that he would go, that it's pretty much just sore at this point. All signs point to him playing.
Big Al, I just had a crazy thought. If the NFL playoffs was 6 teams, we would have missed the playoffs with an 11-6 record. And during the Super Bowl run, what was the best playoff game that year?
Cool. Okay. Yeah, no, that's true. Actually, if the playoffs were 6 seeds, we would have been out last year and this year. We went 7 both years. Let's see, the best game in that run. Oh, I hope I'm not mixing up my playoff games. I want to say the Falcons divisional game was that year, right? Unless I'm mixing up years. But that quarterbacking performance from Rodgers was maybe, outside of the Favre versus Raiders game after he lost his dad, the most complete and incredible quarterbacking performance I've ever seen. Like, it was just Rodgers came out that day and said, yeah, we winning. And there was nothing anyone could do. It was incredible. And so I would probably lean that way. It's Jake Abbey.
I'm sorry I didn't hear. Our D-line all healthy for the game?
Maybe not. TJ Slayton was a DNP today following that injury that he suffered against the Bears. That would be the only defensive lineman with an injury, but that's a big, big boy to have an injury. And DNP rather than limited doesn't necessarily start off the week on the best foot.
Gavi also saying, I agree that Falcons game was awesome, but our D in that game was legendary.
Yes, indeedy. Yes, it was.
Packers Kingdom saying hurt back at practice.
Yes, he was.
Commander G-Man, that Falcons game was on my birthday. We'll definitely always remember that one.
That was one heck of a birthday, right? All right, so for the last question, I do want to answer this one for Chip, and then we're probably going to jump on out of here. Now, this is just off the top of my head. I haven't thought about this like super extensively because it hasn't been super relevant. But I got to say, let's see, what do we got in the playoffs? We got Rams in the playoffs, Commanders, Eagles, Vikes, Lions, and Bucks. Let's see, ranking them. I like the matchup. I would say I ultimately like the matchup probably against the Rams the best is where I would go. And I say that for a couple reasons. One, I do think while the Rams are a very good team, they've gone on a nice tear to end the year. I think we always talk about other teams owning LaFleur, right? Well, LaFleur kind of does against the Rams. They have a very good track record against the Rams. Stafford does not necessarily scare them. I have faith that they would be able to stop Kieran Williams at this point. And I also think offensively versus defensively, that could be a game where the Packers passing game would actually get into rhythm. So let's go with them at number 1. Then I would say ultimately number 2, let's go Commanders, just because I think that their roster is probably, while young like the Packers and everything, they're probably realistically just in terms of development a year behind the other teams here at least, although Jaden Daniels is terrifying to go against, but still I think that that's number 2. Number 3, I would go with the Buccos. I don't want to go against the likes of Mike Evans, Kate Otten, etc. Their offense can pop off at any time, but I'm not sure that they would have the depth that if the Packers concentrated on those star players to really get it going, even with the divergence of McMillian. So I guess I'd go Buccos number 3. And then I'm going to put Lions at 4. The Packers at least played them tough both times this year for parts of the game. And with their defense just being so wounded, I guess I got to go there. It feels dirty. It doesn't feel right. They're the number 1 seed for a reason. I just feel like that's one that the Packers can crack if they get time number 3. And then I would go Eagles probably number 5 and Vikes number 6. That's where I would sit, Chip. That's what I'm looking at for a quick, not all that much thought out answer. All right, everybody, it is time for us to jump on out of here. Thank you so much for joining us here at LTB. On Friday, I'll be back looking at like the actual numbers, previewing the matchup, at least from that standpoint. Not going to break it down too much, but at least going to give you the numbers to really identify what we might be looking for on Sunday. So go out there, have a great week, everybody. We will see you on Friday. And, oh no, where is it? I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, and as always, go Pack, go.